All right, welcome back to Eschatology Matters. I am Josh Howard, and I want to remind everybody before we get going today to check out our website. We're at eschatologymatters.org. You can find our normal content that is cross-posted there, which will include our YouTube channel and all of our audio podcast information and content that'll be co-posted there. But also, we have additional content on the website that is specific. For example, we have outgoing uh, articles that Jacob Toman writes on a frequent basis. We also have information on our upcoming conference, which will be September 8th and 9th in Topeka, Indiana. So if you have not already grabbed tickets for that, go ahead and grab them. You can find all the information about the speakers on the website, but go ahead and check that out. And please keep up with the content that's coming out there. Today, it's my pleasure to talk with one of the guys that has supported Eschatology Matters really since the very inception of this ministry, which is Joe Morris with Squirrelly Joe's Coffee. So, Joe, so good to talk to you today, brother.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
Joe, you came on early on. I noticed that even if we were doing poorly in other areas, at least we could have good coffee. And I love coffee. I know obviously you love coffee, so we're going to set eschatology to the side today and chat a good deal about coffee. But Joe, how'd you guys get started? How'd you get into coffee? Tell us a little bit about the inception of Squirrely Joe's.
Yeah, so it's a funny story. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, so right when the shutdowns were happening, and honestly, it was like before they actually announced, like, hey, businesses have to shut down. My wife and I were sitting with a couple friends, and we had made the joke that because this is when all the toilet paper was nowhere to be found.
Oh, good grief! I remember those days.
Yeah, people were freaking out and all that. So my wife made the joke, well, what if we can't get coffee? What are we going to do? Because that's like a huge, part of our life. And our friends joked. They said, well, you should buy a coffee roaster and just roast your own. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, well, that's kind of a good idea. 2 weeks later, we had a roaster. We started, playing around with roasting coffee. And then, we said to ourselves, like, wow, this is actually like the best coffee we've ever had. And, we just started selling it to friends and family and, people we work with. And then just the business just kind of grew out of that. So it was really a hobby turned into a business. So,
Wow. And
yep.
pretty recent then, because I mean, we were talking just for a second before we started recording, but I know I've seen your coffee has taken off. It's starting to, pop up in a lot of different places I've seen, but this is a pretty recent venture for you then.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just a hobby for maybe up until last October was when we really started taking it seriously. Like, hey, this could be, a legitimate business.
Right.
And we've owned businesses before. We owned a CrossFit gym for about 8 years. My wife has a flower farm that she runs off of our property. So, it's business isn't a new thing to us, but yeah, this was just, something we did for fun turned into a real business. So it's been fun.
Okay. Well, Joe, I've got coffee questions to ask you. And I really want to talk about some coffee. I'm not gonna lie, I'm drinking some coffee right now, but I'm at my office. So this is what I like to refer to as church coffee. And if anybody knows coffee, there's coffee and then there's good coffee. I'm holding coffee right now, your coffee though, and I'm not just saying this because you're a partner here with our website or with our ministry, but your coffee is good coffee. I really have appreciated your coffee. But tell me this, because I want to get into beans, I want to talk about roasts, that type of thing. But in general, would you describe what you do as a Christian business? Like, is this a Christian venture? Obviously, the beans aren't out preaching the gospel, but I think you would probably agree with me that it's a sort of Christian venture. How would you describe like your business in relationship to your faith?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the foundation of what we do. I mean, we'd like to talk about Christ being in the DNA of the business. That's kind of our business philosophy is, if we're doing everything for God's glory, then that includes how we roast our coffee beans, how we sell our coffee beans, how we, talk to customers, how we reach out to customers, like with you guys, just reaching out, offering our services, supporting ministries, because there are some other ministries that we support with coffee. And it's, I'm not a billionaire, so I can't just, write a check to help out a ministry. I'm not, I don't have the credentials that, the speakers have, so I can go speak at conferences, but, we have really good coffee. So it's something that we like to do is, support ministries that we believe in and that we want to partner with and helping them out any way we can. So, yeah, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
definitely a big part of what we do.
Yeah, but one of the things, and this will be like, I think this will be the only eschatological content of this conversation, probably, Joe. But no, just thinking toward the kingdom of God, its effects in this world. I think one of the things that I've seen a revival of has been Christians doing things that are good just for the sake of doing things that are good. So like there's the specific ways in which you have partnered with ministries, you've reached out. Like I know you've sent us coffee just out of the blue. It was just awesome. Like I opened up, a box of Squirrely Joes, and it was just a, thank you for your ministry. So there's ways you can specifically support ministries, but there's also just offering a quality product. And I think as Christians, there's been maybe a retrieval of that. I want to support good Christian ventures. I want Christians making good Christian, or good Christian coffee, good coffee that glorifies God in making a quality product, but also it helps to spread the message of God because people see them doing something better than the world. They have better values behind it. They have a better work ethic, and they're making a quality product. I see that with ventures like Squirrely Joe's. Let's talk coffee, Joe. How did somebody come to the place of grinding up a bean and pouring hot water over it and creating this delicious product that we've come to? No, what are some of the things you look for in coffee? Because I know coffee has been kind of a venture for me. There was a time in my life where I drank, this is confession time. I drank K cups. And I've repented since then, but there's a lot that goes into coffee. Like walk us into what makes a good bean a good roast.
Yeah, so actually, the one of the most fun parts of being a coffee roaster is testing coffees, tasting coffees. Getting coffees from different origins, just to you know taste different things that are out there. At different roast levels and that sort of thing. So really, when we go to all the roasts that we've picked, so our goal with picking a roast is, what is the average person going to do? They're going to put it through a drip coffee maker that they probably got from Walmart, so it's not a high-end coffee maker. That's by and large most people. So what we wanted to do was create, pick beans that are going to taste good through a drip machine, that like even a cheap drip machine.
Mm,
So even though we do what's called cupping, where you roast the coffee and then you grind it up and you actually put it straight in the water, and there's a whole process to it. If you Google coffee cupping, you can go down a crazy long rabbit hole. But we also always run the coffee through just a cheap drip machine just to see what it's going to taste like, because it's going to taste totally different depending on how you brew it.
mm.
So we really wanted to pick coffees that just the average person is going to drink and think to themselves, like just like you said, the difference between church coffee and our coffee, there's definitely a difference there.
Right.
So we want people to see that, like, if you did a blind taste test, there's no way that you're going to pick the church coffee or the Folgers or the Maxwell House or the cheap coffee over ours. So
Right.
yeah.
No, that's helpful. Okay. Answer me this one, because you mentioned different ways of brewing. So we
Hmm.
do we do mainly pour over at our house. That's just
Hmm.
kind of our preferred method. Makes about 2 cups in the carafe that we use. We've done French press in the past. I didn't. It kind of gets a little dredgy sometimes, but
Hmm.
but in general, I've heard it's more important with a fresh grind than the method of brewing it. So in other words, like the freshness of the bean grind is more important than the method of brew. Is that what's your take on that?
Yeah, for sure. So what you'll notice is, and you could do a little experiment with your pour over, is just go to the store and just buy, a thing of Folgers that's already been ground, and then take ours, and you can look at the bloom. So as soon as that water hits the beans for the first time, you're going to get a really good bloom out of fresh coffee. And with an older stale coffee, you're not going to get that at all. It's just going to,
Right.
because all the CO2 is gone. It's been stale for, who knows how long. So when you get a good bloom on a coffee, that's how you can really test the freshness of that coffee.
Okay. And how
Hmm.
how fresh are we talking then with your? Because I know I've seen some of your shipments, and you're pretty fast on the shipments. Like
Yeah.
what is that from roast to countertop? Like what sort of a time frame are we looking at for a good fresh roast of coffee?
So that's one of the things that kind of differentiate us between a lot of coffee roasters. I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of coffee roasters will roast once or twice a week, and they'll
Mm,
get all their orders in, that way. So we don't actually roast until the orders come in. So I roast every day. I roast Monday through Saturday pretty much. So if you put an order in today, like right now, I get off work at 2:30. I immediately start roasting, and I roast. I try to get all the orders out the same day. Um, So I mean, we roast it today. We'll put it in the mail today. You'll get it in 2 to 4 business days, depending on what part of the country you live in. And I mean, the coffee's ready to go. It's as fresh as possible. So,
Okay. How about
hmm
you get your beans in? Let's say I order from Squirrelly Joe's. I get my beans in, and then we have a trip that I forgot about. We're going out of town. I throw them in the freezer. Good way of storing them or not? Is that going to keep them fresh in any regard?
yeah. The freezer method, that'll help keep the freshness there for sure. The
Okay.
biggest thing is grinding them. So I mean, if you go out of town for a long weekend and you come back, your beans are still going to be fresh. You got about 3 weeks. I like to drink the beans within 2 weeks, but if you stretch it to three, you're still going to have a good quality bean. But yeah, I mean, it's as long as you keep them in a darker, dry, don't put them in the windowsill, that sort of thing. Keep them
Mm,
sealed up. But once you grind coffee, it's going stale pretty quick. So I try to convert people who order ground from us, because you can't order ground from us. We will grind it, but I try and tell people, go to Walmart, buy a cheap grinder. It's so much better. It's worth it for sure.
right. Yeah. You,
Yeah.
you grind it with a tear in your eye as you send it out to them. As
That's all
for
right.
as for grinding, would you recommend burr grinder over blade grinder? Because I've heard the blade grinders will kind of lightly kind of burn or singe the bean. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, bird grinders are the way to go.
Okay.
They are a little more pricey, but the biggest thing that I've seen with the blade grinders is you're going to get a little bit more of an inconsistent grind.
Yeah.
Where with that bird grinder, you put it on the setting that you want, and you're going to get a pretty consistent grind every time.
Okay, yeah. And wait,
Yeah,
you say more expensive, and you're right, like, comparing the two, but like we have an economy burr grinder and we've been wearing that thing out for years. I mean, we use it
yeah,
every day, so it's not
they
it's
they
not
do last. Yeah, they last longer.
right. Yeah.
Hmm.
So like if you're into coffee, it'd be worth it for sure.
Oh, for
I would think.
sure. Oh
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Tell me about roast levels because you guys have several different blends. I want to talk roast levels as far as light, medium, dark, that sort of thing, but also source of origin, country of origin.
Hmm.
What are y'all looking at when you go to those? And as far as roast levels, would you recommend anything for maybe somebody that drinks coffee irregularly or infrequently, that type of thing? What's your take?
Hmm. Yeah, so we actually don't have any blends. The only blend technically that we have is our half and half, which is half decaf, half regular. So all of our coffees are single origin, which means they just, it's one bean from one country, the same farmer. That's all it is. We're not mixing beans or anything like that.
Mm,
So really, coffee is a very individual, thing. It depends. Some people like dark coffee. I don't particularly like dark coffee. So I'd like to stick with a light roast or a medium roast, but that
mm,
really just depends on the person. So typically what you'll get with the lighter roast, you're going to get more of those tasting notes coming out of the coffee. So if you look on pretty much every roaster will put what the tasting notes are on there. You'll see vanilla or chocolate or graham cracker or hazelnut or something. There's all kinds of different things depending on where the coffee is grown, what the altitude is, what grows around the coffee, what other crops are around the coffee. So really, that's kind of the fun part of coffee, where you can honestly taste hundreds of different coffees, and you'll start to kind of see what you like. Do you like it lighter roast? Do you like a darker roast? Do you like that kind of medium roast where you're starting to get some more of those dark flavors?
mm-hmm.
But so it really just depends on the person. I can't really. What I recommend to people is start out with a medium, and just it's like whenever somebody asks me what should I try, I tell them just try the house roast. It's a pretty basic Brazilian coffee, which is kind of a middle of the road. It's roasted to where it's a pure medium coffee, so you're not going to get too dark of those kind of the more of the burnt flavor of
Mm.
the dark, and you're not going to get those more nutty flavors or sweet flavors from the lighter roast. Just try that middle of the road and just see how you like it, and just experiment from there. So
Good. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Is there an advantage, Joe, to like, you guys said you do pretty much like a single farmer batch of beans. Is there an advantage to that as opposed to like, the blends and because typically you're going to a big box store, you're buying a bag of coffee, it's going to be a blend from some origin, if that. Is there an advantage to that or is it just kind of consistency?
Yeah, so the quality of the beans, a lot of times what you'll find is, and this isn't, for everybody. If you're buying from a specialty company, if they're doing blends, They're probably sticking with high quality beans, but a lot of times you'll see some of the bigger brands, they will mix in some of the cheaper coffee beans that are,
Mm,
not as good quality. They don't taste as good. The import standards are a lot lower. That's where that's why the Folgers and the Maxwell Houses aren't really good coffees, is because they're using a really poor quality coffee.
mm.
And then the coffees are ranked. So if you go on to like an importer's website, it'll have a score for what that coffee is. And, we try to keep our standards to a certain score. And then we also try to work with, so we don't have any organic coffee. We don't have any fair trade coffee, because those certifications are really hard for farmers to get in some of these countries like Brazil and Colombia.
Okay.
And but there are importers that, even though their farmers don't have those certifications, they do have a pretty rigorous process selecting which farmers they work with. So we try to use importers that have pretty high standards, and the farmers are using ethical methods of farming. They're paying their people well. The importers are paying the farmers well, that sort of thing. So
Mm.
we do try and pay attention to, the farms that we're buying from. Are they being treated well by the importer, and do the farmers, treat their employees well, that sort of thing.
Okay, I've got a question about that one because you brought up organic. So I have a hopeful eschatology. I also have an according distrust for the depravity of man, right? So we're confident what God's doing. We're less confident with what our evil human hearts may do. So I'm a bit suspicious, hopefully not on the unhealthy side. But when I see that label organic or natural on coffee, sometimes I wonder, like, what does that mean? And I have friends who, for example, are convinced that, the organic coffees are maybe easier on the stomach, or that there's less acidity in them, maybe, or something like that. I don't know if that's too broad a question, but do you have any experience or take on that? The organic labels, or maybe the low acidity coffees, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so my big hang up with organic coffees is the farmers really have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that organic certification, which most farmers are, they're not making very much money anyways. They're living in, mostly poor countries. So for them to go through that certification is really tough. So to put that, I don't have a problem with organic coffee.
Okay.
I've had some that are good. I've had some that weren't so good. So if that, organic stamp makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, then, go for it. But, I've had tons of coffees that are not organic, and they come from reputable places,
Mm.
and they're just as good as some of the organic coffee. So it's really just, I don't know. And I think organic's been kind of played out in America in a cage that's 2 square feet bigger than the non-organic guys, that sort of thing. So,
Gotcha.
you know,
Gotcha. I hope I didn't just lose you there, Joe. Are you still there?
it glitched for a second, but yeah.
Glitched for a second. Okay, hopefully we're back.
Yeah.
My apologies if that froze up on the video feed. But no, that was helpful. So tell me this, Joe, because I got to ask. What's your take on Starbucks coffee? I've heard from some people that their beans are super solid, and like they've got the best beans. I've never cared for the taste. I've just never cared for the taste of Starbucks. What's your take? You're shaking your head, so I think you're with me on this.
Yeah.
What's your take?
So if you dump sugar in anything, it's going to taste delicious. So, I mean, that's just the way it is. But as far as the beans go, so this is kind of part of our mission as well, is getting people to drink good coffee. Is most Americans have been, their taste buds have been trained to where coffee should be, so thick you could chew on it, and it should hurt going down, and it should give you acid reflux. And if it doesn't put hair on your chest, then it's not strong enough.
Right, right.
Um, and that's how most of those companies do it. They just burn their coffee. That way it has that burnt flavor that, Americans think that it's supposed to taste like that, and it's not supposed to taste like that. So Starbucks it's not that great.
Not that.
It's
Okay.
really not. It's not. I mean, I'll go there if we're on a road trip or something, I'll stop and get a latte or something, and it's fine, but overall it's not that great. They're just good at marketing and good at branding, and
Not
all
worth
that kind
not
of
worth
stuff.
$9 for a drip coffee from there.
No, definitely
Okay,
not.
yeah. It's funny you mentioned the thick coffee. There was this commercial. Maybe we can find it to attach to this video. It was this I think it was a Super Bowl commercial, but it was like some guy goes into like, one of these diners in the out west, and anyway, she's pouring him a cup of coffee, and it's like sludge and there's big old chunks coming out with it. I'll just never forget that. I was like, that's real coffee.
Yeah,
But it's not, like you said.
Right.
Tell us about the roast process, Joe, because I've been really interested in this. My wife and I, well, I guess I want to be you when I grow up, Joe. My wife and I have always talked about, like, when the kids get out of the house one day and we're kind of bored, and that sort of thing, that we want to roast coffee because we both like coffee and enjoy that sort of thing. But I heard from a friend who had a backyard roaster, and he was doing it, and apparently there's a second crack that you listen for in the beans or something like that, and he didn't hear it and went for the third crack. Anyway, it blew up and like did thousands of dollars worth of damage. And I remember hearing that story, and I thought I never knew coffee roasting was a dangerous affair. What's it look like to roast coffee? Like, what is that looking like for you? What's your setup look like?
Yeah, so we use what's called a hot air roaster. So basically, there's the heating element is heating below the beans, and then there's a blower that's blowing the hot air up through the beans, and it's in a roasting chamber. And then the beans are just kind of flopping around and cycling its way back down and then up, so that way they're not burning. Because if they just sit in one place, they're just going to burn.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're talking about with the cracking, so the temperature of the bean and the rate of the rise of the temperature of the bean is something that you want to pay attention to. So typically, first crack of the bean happens at 400 degrees, and that's when the roasting is really happening. The good part, where the flavors are coming out, and the bean turns from. So the beans go from like a greenish color to a yellowish color, and then to a brownish color. So for our light roast and our medium roast, we're stopping the roast somewhere between first and second crack.
Okay.
And for our dark roast, we're actually taking it into the second crack to a certain temperature. So each coffee has its own temperature that we pull it off the heat and cool it down. You want to try and cool it down pretty much right away. So it really depends on the coffee and the origin and what kind of flavors you're trying to get, what kind of roast level you're trying to get, the density of the bean, the moisture content in the bean, all that kind of stuff goes into it. So.
Oh wow, okay. And how big is this setup that you're talking about? Is this like a room size setup, or is it something relatively small? Or
it's pretty small. I would say it's probably a 2x2 machine, and it's probably maybe 5 feet tall. I mean, it's not very big. Now, we don't have a big. Yeah, I mean, we just have a 3-pound roaster right now. We're actually looking at getting a bigger one because our volume has gone up so much. But yeah, we don't have one of those big giant drum roasters that you see that are, take up a whole warehouse.
Gotcha.
I mean, those things are like $30,000-$40,000,
Wow.
So yeah, those things are nuts. So no, we've got a small setup. We're a pretty small operation. But yeah, we're looking at actually going into a 10-pound roaster here in the next couple months. So.
Okay, very cool. Joe, this has been my favorite conversation by far on Eschatology Matters. I want that noted. But where can people follow your coffee, man? Where can they pick up a bag? Where can they find you online? All that sort of stuff. I know you're on Twitter, but where's the coffee sales happening through?
Yeah, if you just go to squirrellyjoes.com, that's our website. And actually, we have a discount code for Eschatology Matters. And I'll go ahead and plug that right now.
Very cool.
So we're giving you 20% off on your whole order. So at checkout, if you enter in E Matters at checkout for your coupon code, you will get 20% off your order. So that's squirrellyjoes.com.
Fantastic. E Matters for the discount code.
Yep.
That is fantastic. And are we going to see you at the conference in September? I think your coffee is going to be there.
Yeah, I will 100% ship coffee. We're still looking at the schedule to see if I'll be there or not. So.
Fantastic. Well, brother, I appreciate you. It's been a joy getting to drink your coffee, first of all. But I mean, we're grateful that you partnered with Eschatology Matters. We're grateful to see Christian businesses, and I'm grateful to drink good coffee. So, thanks for the promo code, and thanks for chatting with me today, brother.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Seated here at my right hand, the Lord to my Lord did command, for of these heathen I will make a kingly footstool for your sake.